Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Here I come, here I am. Oh, finally in front of my sign. Got me a chair that works, I think, and a guitar that works. There's my beautiful sign. And I got a special for my tripod to put my iPad on here so that you see my sign. Now, I know if you've been visiting my website, you see it in the picture there. This is my yard here. I'll try maybe right at the very end to move it around a little bit and show you the beautiful scenery. And there's a lake about 200 feet behind my house here, great big lake. Good fishing, swimming lake, boating lake. So I'm real proud of my property here. I bought this for $30,000 cash, and actually paid $5,000 down to start with, and then made payments for a year, and then paid off $20,000 cash. And I put another 10 or 15 into it with that little trailer house and stuff. Great. This is my retirement home. I just love it. I mean, I can't even describe how much I love it. And I'm getting took from this with that ALS, but that's all right. I'm going to leave it for my daughter, my youngest daughter and her family, and all the kids and grandkids that I love so much, and so they'll carry on. That's how it works. Sometimes you're luckier and sometimes you're not so lucky. This damn ALS is just unknown, you know. No cure and no cause. I would expect in the next few hundred years they're going to get to the bottom of this, but right now they don't. So I don't really dwell on it that much. When it handicaps me, I have a hard time picking up a chair and playing a guitar, which I won't be able to do here after very long. I got this guitar special. I got it off of Amazon for $2,000. It's a $3,100 guitar from Martin. I got it. It's brand new. Brand spanking new. I mean, just new case. It's what they call a 018. Where's it at there? 0-18. Martin Company. Established 1833. This is serial number 2119540. It's just, I got it. It's little and it's light. I got my D45, which is a wonderful guitar, and I got my little first act that I've showed you in prior movies here. And it's a fun little guitar. I like it. And now I'm trying this one. So, what's this all about? The Bunnell Farm. That's my grandfather. I asked some people, oh, where's the Bunnell Farm? Well, this is the Bunnell Farm. We had a pretty large, 60, 80 acres or something like that, which, around 1900, 1910. My dad was born in 1918 on the farm. Long, skinny piece on Highway 10. Town is 3 miles that way. That's south. This way north. And 3 miles coming into town. Then another half a mile, you're downtown. Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. 2 miles east. It's all Walmart is out there, the airport, Menards. There was a Kmart. There's a huge development district retail out there. And that's the Bunnell Farm. We had 1.5 miles of Highway 10. And it's a 4-lane highway, the one that goes all the way from New York to Seattle. And so it's a 4-lane highway now. And then on the other side of the property, it was Long Lake, a very good fishing, swimming lake. So 1.5 miles of lakeshore and 1.5 miles of Highway 10. It was wonderful. In those days, it was a good farm on the route there of Highway 10, the lake, but it turned into, this is the land of 10,000 lakes, and that's not an exaggeration. Another 10,000 ponds or something. So Now, I don't have per se lakeshore property, but I'm attached to the lake. And then I got DNR, the public access. I hook right into that. I walk through the grass right there in front of that truck. I just walk through the grass. I go about 50 yards, and another half of that, and I've got my feet in the water. I got a dock and a boat ramp and a picnic area, and then there's the whole, 1,200 feet of brush and lakeshore there. That's everybody can technically use. They don't do it much, but they could. And I don't use it much, but I could. Like that commercial, if you're seeing that on television, that queer guy from the Friends or whatever it is. Not Friends, but whatever they call that. It's after the news. And I like him as a personality. It turns out he's queer, and they can't help that. A lot of people got sucked into that. And that's a lot of what this whole thing is about here. You'll see me on my website speaking very seriously about the damage that's been done to the planet Earth and the human race with the big three deadly poisons, I call them. And they are. And that's Christianity. And that's not to say the other religions aren't equally as fucked up, terrible, and bad. I'm going to stop using coarse language like that for my YouTube. I don't want to get kicked off. And I think you're allowed if you're using it as an expression. But I'm still going to try to make myself use a different word. Like there, instead of saying that, I could say really messed up, just unbelievably, or something like that. So, Christianity, homosexuality, LGBTQPP. I think it's that on the corner there. I'm looking over at it. I'm sure that it is. That's where the filming is taking place here. And I think the little microphone input is right there. So, believe it or not, I worked a little bit hard figuring this out so that I could get. If you got no sound, you're messed up. Now I'm gonna even come up a level on the sound here. I've got what they call Zoom. I think it's called Zoom. The sound system, and maybe even some amplification. But right now I'm only like 2.5 feet, and maybe only 2 feet with the guitar here from the camera and the mic on the iPad. So I'm pretty sure that's picking up. I can't see the picture because I had to do a reversal. If I had it where I could see the picture here, then it reads the sign backwards, that mirror stuff. So I had to turn the iPad around and use that editor camera, the one you would shoot away from you, and see that, so that you can see my sign. I was going to light a fire, but the wind is blowing, and I was going to have a hard time getting it going. I kind of just on the spur of the moment here. I've been warming up to this for a few days, and I got the tripod here in the mail at Amazon Friday, I think. So this is Sunday. So here it is, me talking about Christianity, homosexuality, and LGBTQPPP. That's the PPP. Q is queer, of course. They use that quite a bit. I added the PPP. That's a banal original there. That's for the perverts and the pedophiles and the pornography. And that's just all tied into that weird sexual illness, sickness that they want to put up, and you got to do it. You got to, boy, I'm the awfulest guy here right now. What I'm saying, oh boy, I'm a terrible guy. I mean, the Queen of England and Theresa May and even Trump, you don't hear him saying much, but I'm sure where he's at, because he's just as redneck as they come in every regard. And he's playing that Christian fiddle top to bottom, and I don't believe he's a drop of a Christian. But that's where the votes are at, and that's where his constituents, and the whole power base in this Make America Great Again. So it's the Christians, the queers, LGBTQPP, and marijuana, and methamphetamines, and cocaine, the whole drug thing top to bottom. Amphetamines, Viagra. Marijuana, that's another one slipping through the cracks, see? And marijuana is the worst drug of them all. It's horrible, just horrible. It's insidious what it does to these children's minds and these young families and these people. And you got these fools like Willie Nelson out there just thinking they really got something, and then making it out for the other people, and you're like the homophobic on marijuana if you say anything, you know. So they're pushing that on our kids, they're pushing that on our society, and they're pushing that on our culture. And it doesn't matter if you're black or white or green or brown. It just if you're a Mexican or a Chinese or a African American, or we're all plagued with that. And I see the hawk there in the sky. So I'm fighting that, and one of the reasons I'm fighting it, I wouldn't even fight the fight, because how are you going to come up against Christianity, for Christ's sake, in the United States of all places? And here's somebody's voice there. Hey, oh, it's the guy on the porch there, I think, across the road. And so how are you going to fight that? Well, I've got the cause of Christianity, where it came from. And I got the cause of where all the homosexuality and all that LGBTQ came from, and the drug addiction and this whole decadent society and war and killing and murder, and it's the stimulants. Now, I put that sign up to start with, and without the word stimulated on it. And I looked at it and I said, yeah, that's good. That's what I call my situation here. I use the origins of the mind. It's kind of a takeoff on what's his name now? The guy that Origins of the Species, Darwin, and so his is the origins of the species. Mine is the origins of the mind. And so he does a whole big thing on the species there, trying to establish, you know, it's recognized that the Christian creation theory is just, it isn't even a theory, it's just a big story. And so the creationists and evolutionists trying to figure out how this came to be with this marvel that of life. And so his is world famous, of course, forever, and been gone all of my life, but I think he was the late 1800s, early 1900s. And it was a big deal. Think about that. It was a big deal, the origins of the species. This guy is saying something, not creation. Here's this person writing a book, and a scientist, and of course I'm sure all the Christians went nuts, you know, this atheist, godless person coming up with some kind of a wild theory. His theory has substance. You know, basically it's the amoeba crawls up out of the water and eventually maybe it crawls to the edge of the water to start with, so then it swims to the edge of the water or something, then eventually it develops legs, and then pretty soon lungs to breathe, and you can take that for millions and millions and millions of years, and you can end up with the dinosaurs and the lizards and the reptiles, and then you know, the prehistoric monsters and man. And see some kid on a motorcycle there, he's having fun. And so the whole thing and its theory, you know, what I always tell everybody, and I think I get repetitious on this whole thing, because my whole thing is just in a nutshell here. It isn't that much. It's them 3 deadly poisons. They're caused by the stimulated mind, which is completely unnatural. There goes the sheriff, which is completely unnatural in every aspect. What we've done is we've taken, I'll jump back to the stimulated mind. We've taken, see in the grass there, now you're not getting a very good shot of the grass there, but there's nice, pretty grass, about 2 foot tall, all across the front of the truck there, and it's going to seed. So that's the original plant life, let's say seeds, let's say wheat, oats, corn. Corn is more on a stalk now, these are the grasses here. So in nature, we would grasp them with our hands and eat them, along with bugs and grubs and worms and frogs and eggs and ducks and rabbits and whatever, deer, if we could catch or snare and shoot them or jump them or trace them and run them down sometimes. and nature's plant life versus hybrid plant life. Hybrid plant life means that we harvest with the scythe. It used to be, you got that big thing with a knife on the end of it. We make big piles of that stuff, and then we come out with the horses and the wagons, and we bring it in. Now we got this massive machinery and fields, you know. They say they got fields in South America 25 miles in each direction. Around here, half a mile is a big field each direction. A mile is a really big field. There's a lot of those. This is all north. The whole United States is a one big farm. You could darn near say, as soon as you get out of the rural metropolitan areas. And definitely here in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, and then all the way down to Texas, all the way up into Canada, and the Midwest here. Yeah, but there's a huge farm here. So we got this machinery, and now we got wheat by the barrel full, and grinding it up. And here's some people out on a joyride. They're just having a good time. Some kind of a pretty nice big car. It's a cloudy night now. We'll have some nice sunny days here. I'll have the fire going. There's a lot of traffic out here. I'm just enjoying this to no end. I am absolutely so happy to be sitting here telling my story and my discovery, that I just couldn't be prouder and I couldn't be happier. And me and my granddaughter Gabby, we got this thing rolling again here about a week ago. And now I'm coming with number 5. This is number 5. And I'm tying this in with my ALS and my Lou Gehrig motor neuron disease, if you don't know the MND. That's what, in England, that's what they call it. Just like they drive on the other side of the car, and they used a pound instead of the dollar. Well, they used MND, motor neuron disease, which it's all the same thing. It's ALS, that got named after anamorphic love stuff, named after, and the Lou Gehrig is more commonly used. So I got that titled on all of my scripts, on my YouTube postings. This is number 5, and I'm going to hold to that title. And I'm thinking there's going to be, what we do is we research a lot, and they have these groups there. The guy got a little teeny kid with him right now. He's having a good time. And on that motorcycle, you maybe got a quick glimpse there as he was going through. Just a smaller motorcycle with a young guy and his little child. So, I don't know, this whole wheat thing, and I just stumbled onto that. I was trying to lose weight, and I was having a bunch of different diets, and I wasn't having very much success. And my youngest daughter, the one that's going to end up in this place, she says, now she's just young yet then. This has been quite a while ago. Yeah, well, she's only 40 now, or if she's 40 yet. And so she was like 25 or 28 or something. And she says, what about carbohydrates? And I said, well, what's a carbohydrate? And she says, sugars, she said, I think, or maybe more natural sugars. I said, yeah, I'll look into it, because I was not having any luck at all. I tried a popcorn diet, and I tried a grapefruit diet, and I actually had tried a little bit of Atkins years and years ago, and thought, boy, that'll be for me, because I can eat all that meat. And it wasn't very long. I was thinking, boy, I can't live on that meat, nothing but meat, as much as I liked meat of all varieties. Well, it turned out I didn't have no idea then, and that the reason I was having such a hard time of it was because of my addiction. I was having to give up my pop. I was having to give up my grains and my bread and my wheat and my breaded chicken and breaded fish and shrimp and prawns dipped in batter and sauce, tartar sauce, and I mean, just having to give up salads, you know, and I didn't realize, didn't have a clue that I was just 100% wholly, every part of my being addicted to all those sugars and carbohydrates. And I had to have them. Just like I was addicted to tobacco, nicotine, I had to have my cigarettes. If I have 20 minutes when I'm waking, I'd sleep for 8 hours or something. But any waking hours, it wasn't up very long, and I'm going for that cigarette. And about every 20 minutes throughout the day, so that'd be like 3 an hour for 12 hours, a pack and a half. That's about right. 2 packs in a big day. And you know, sometimes I smoke half, put it down, and pick up the other half, you know. But a hardcore addiction, okay, I had no idea, and you don't, I'm sure, have any idea that you are 100% addicted to all these sugars and carbohydrates. And I say that because nobody is. That's why it's a discovery. Nobody is. And that in and of itself is huge, it's enormous. Because the real rest of the story here, discovery, that it turns out that these are powerful stimulants, a lot like amphetamines and cocaine. And what they do is, this whole thing just came rolling down on me. When I discovered, because I'm looking at wheat on the internet. See, I'm researching all this, and I'm looking and reading, and watching movies and YouTubes, and reading everything on the groups and the people that are dieting and the research of science, everything you would do if you've done research on the computer. You can research anything that you can imagine, except this that I got. This is, I'm alone. I got the one guy here that's got a hold of this, and you won't find nothing. And this what I'm referring to right now about the sugar being a powerful stimulant drug, and wheat. See, what I come up with was that when wheat hits your stomach, just like when sugar hits your stomach to your bloodstream, that's kind of simply spoken, but basically that's what it is. It digests and it breaks down and goes into your bloodstream and your system just immediately. And so therefore it's like sugar. Well, I knew refined sugar. We got sugar plants all over the Red River Valley here in Fargo-Moorhead. It's about 40 miles from here, 45. And in Moorhead is one of them, but the Red River Valley goes all the way from Canada and the Red River all the way down south, and there's sugar factories all up and down that thing. And I worked at our one in Fargo here a number of years ago, and boilers, they got boilers as big as, oh, that truck would be tiny. They're 6 times as big as that. They're as big as a 2-story house. Big furnaces that they're heating with coal. They have railroad cars of coal coming in there to heat, to cook down this sugar and break it down out of these sugar beets. Now they make it out of cane too, cane sugar, but ours is sugar beets, which is a great big beet that grows in the ground here. You know, I'm gonna say grapefruit size or something, but they're shaped pointed, a little more pointed and kind of knobby looking, and they run through and top them and then harvest them just like you would potatoes or something. And mountains of beets up and down this valley, and mountains of sugar beet farming, just massive, and supplying the world's sugar, and you know, along with quite a number of other places in different countries and different parts of the United States, and like I say, the sugar cane. So I knew that's a really highly processed thing, just like making alcohol. They're gonna turn that sugar into alcohol now, which they do. Another great big distillery process, and it's more man-made. So it's pretty easy to see alcohol and sugar, but wheat, I couldn't get a grip on that. And then it came to me, well, it's because it's hybrid, and it's planted, and it's farmed massively. So what we would be going out and getting our natural grain, even corn and potatoes the same way. Yeah, the corn was a little stringly looking thing there, and it had little kernels on it, and that was the original maize or corn before the Inca and the Maya have been hybriding that for many hundreds of years. I don't know if it goes into the thousands of years, but it probably does, before we ever put one foot on this property. Same way with potatoes. So the potato was a little nugget, little end joint on my little finger there or something, and just a little marble size, let's say. Little tubers, sometimes they call them, in the ground under certain trees, under certain weather conditions, at certain times of years, and over the centuries, the Indians had learned, and the people living in the land in this area, that they could find them, and they knew by the tops that if you pulled them out and looked at them, you're going to get them little nuggets. And they're just massive amounts of enzymes and nutrients, like all of nature's foods. and minerals and fiber and just all these water and then trace amounts of sugar in there and carbohydrate. And it was good to eat. And if you could get a bowl full of them or a pouch full of them or hands full if you were just going to eat them right there, and that was good food. Now we can stack potatoes from here to China. I mean, 50 feet high and 1,000 feet wide, and everybody can line up for French fries, you know, and the wheat and the bread, you know, hamburgers and hot dogs and pies and cakes, and just wheat. And wheat, and it's a powerful stimulant drug. Now that's the discovery that everybody scoffs at and laughs at, and can't get a handle on. And how I was able to discover it and then to grasp it and then to put it in context with our warring armies and our civilizations and Buckingham Palace and, you know, Donald Trump and his royalty and beauty and Taj Mahal and Trump Towers and it isn't just Donald Trump, it's the whole entire United States and the whole entire planet Earth. He just happens to be our goat right now for his doings. So now that's the high. See, and I understood. See, I saw the cocaine high. Boy, like them pimps, black pimps generally, but there are a few other, but mostly black when you think pimps. And they got them big robes and them suits and ties and shoes and them big Bentley cars. And boy, I mean, are they the kings? Well, that's cocaine. And this is the same thing. You look at Buckingham Palace now. That wasn't cocaine. That was sugar and wheat and the hybrid fruits and grains. And then caffeine kicks in here big time. And they were tea and coffee beans. And it still is today. So all of these are stimulants. And it turned man into these warring, sophisticated, killing armies. But we think we're just the greatest thing, and you know, we come slaughtered the Americas. We slaughtered the whole planet Earth. That's on my website right now. You see all them little flags? That's just half of them. And how does that come to be? Well, stimulants make things more, and I point this out again and again and again because when something rings a bell, and I think, gee, yeah, that makes sense to me. And then maybe it makes sense to you. And that Sean Penn in that Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Now all the kids are kind of looking up to him because he's kind of the coolest one. He kind of a leader and the head of the class there in this whole hippie dope culture world that they're portraying there, which it was actually occurring somewhat like they were showing it, and it was very questionable because there hadn't been any marijuana in our schools at all, none, zero. Let's say 1950, even 1960. There was a little bit of amphetamine. There might be one kid or somebody whose mother or brother or somebody was doing speed and they got onto it. But there might be even a coach or a teacher or something. See, the colleges, when that amphetamines came home from World War II and became just really used heavily. So, and then I married into a family that were on speed. Speed and amphetamine, they handed out like candy all through the late 40s and 50s and 60s and on up into about 1970 before they made it illegal again and or completely recategorized it. But those people on speed, I'm telling you, they're just the shiningest people, and they just got it all, you know, and in every aspect you can think of. They think, one guy would say, yeah, just burning the candle at two ends there, just like an extra cup of coffee. But it's more than that. The coffee's bad enough in itself, amphetamines more so. So it turns out coffee and caffeine and sugar and wheat and fruit and honey and milk, these are all abundant, massive, 1,000 times more sugar and carbohydrates. And in these massive concentrations and forms, it's a potent, powerful drug. And it okay, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So the kids are asking Sean in his movie role there, whatever they called him in that, for Fast Times at Ridgemont High, What about this speed? I'm pretty sure they were referring to speed. And I don't know what they called it, or speed or amphetamines. And then so he, in his portrayal and his acting ability there, and his directors and whatnot, he's got to make a delivery on this because they know they're throwing a punchline in here for sure. Because the speed is all through Hollywood. And here now they're doing a movie on speed. And just like they're oftentimes with marijuana, they're going to present it as a good thing. Because that's the position they like to take on it. Playing with our minds. And so Sean Penn's answer is to the kids. There's a group, 5, 7, 8 of them there or something. And he says, and he kind of goes, it makes everything more, he says. And he doesn't add a whole lot to that. And he's really, that's a pretty apt description. It makes everything more. And so, yeah, so everything's more. So the pool player, boy, he's liking his pool stroke. And that pretty gal, she's just as pretty gets. And playing that music, boy, it's just sounding good. That's the high. The everything more. See, the sounds are enhanced, and the feelings and senses and colors, and they just feel good, you know. And everything looks good, and they're on top of it. If it flips or something terrible happens, then that's more on that. So when he's saying everything's more, so if you're all of a sudden there's something screams, or there's a car coming racing at you 90 miles an hour or something, your adrenaline, then that'll be more. So that's the more aspect of what doesn't get spoken, or does, and this is my discovery again, is that more, and caffeine and alcohol and nicotine fit in this big time too, that more your psyche and your instincts and your feelings and your senses. So let's say that, I get to the war part of this now. Let's say your aggressive instincts, showing off for the girls and swinging from branches in the trees and doing somersaults and chasing after one another and getting into skirmishes and then there's the actual rut of, you know, battling and fighting and stuff, and then there's the actual fighting over who gets to stay on this piece of ground. And see, somebody going to come by at me and they're going to laugh at me, you know. And so am I going to take that, or am I going to go chase them down and rub their nose in the dirt, you know? And maybe you'll just blow it off, probably will. But what I'm saying is those natural instincts of territory and the girlfriend-boyfriend mating thing, and just in general, well, all the species do that. You see all the little deer skirmishing, and the fishes will do that, and the birds and the eagles, and all the creatures do that. And it's part of nature's plan, this Darwin's survival of the fittest and natural selection, and they built this aggressive into us somehow, some way, and this adrenaline, you know. Adrenaline is really something, you know. You'll hear about a parent picking up a car or something that's run up over their child or something. They're so massively strong for those moments, and they can run so fast. And then that's the deer, you know. They'll hear a cracking brush or a sound, or they'll see a movement or something, and they'll just stop for just that second. And either they're going to bolt and run, or they're going to slither away. But they're focused in now. Their adrenaline is all the way up. And they're going to, whether or not it turns out just one rabbit chasing another rabbit, and then now they'll let down again, see, and their adrenaline gland will go back to normal. But let's say that's not that. That's wolves coming up on them, trying to sneak up on them. So they're going to make their decision now, whether they're going to, depending on where they're at right then, whether they're going to kind of slither off into they can disappear like the smoke. Or if they're going to just bolt and run for everything they got. And then the little ones will be bolting and running them, and they'll scatter so that they can't get took down. Now, of course, the wolves are on the run right then. They're going to get them. They're going to eat them. And a lot of motorcycles out today, trucks, cars, everything. And so the adrenaline from the deer. Now, I like to throw in here if the deer, the whitetail. That whitetail comes up. He's got a tail about that big. And you'll see that whitetail, and that's so that they'll chase him. He's the buck. He's the biggest and the toughest and the fastest. And if he can get them chasing him, maybe the does and the fawns can get away. That's part of nature's plan. And in nature, in the fall of the year, he has horns come out, and his muscles throw up on his shoulders and stuff, and he gets to bucking. Now that sparring that they were doing when they were young, now this is getting a lot more serious now. And they're having some ferocious battles. And the bucks over who gets what territory and who gets what females, and the females, their juices are coming up too, and they're coming into ovary or whatever they call it. So this is nature, and these territorial instincts. But on the territorial instinct side of this, and the aggressions, salmon do the same thing. The eagles, the bears. I mean, everything has got even the grass and the grasshoppers. I mean, they're in their own way, you drop a seed down here and put a brick on top of it, and that seed will try to wiggle when it's coming around with its sprout to come up if it can. If it happens to be not too far down where it's completely smothered, it'll find its way out of there, and it'll be all crooked, and up it'll come, and then it'll go all the way to fruitation and seed life. But this territorial instinct is where all the wars came in, and the enslaving, and that's all from stimulants. And huge armies, Egypt and Persia and Aztecs and Mongolians and Egyptians and Greek and the royal family, London, European royalty, and just any of this stuff. If you look at every single one of them, you're going to find them just loaded right to the gills with sugar and hybrid carbohydrates and wheat and milk and juice and honey and fruit and caffeine and alcohol. And then after they came to the Americas, well, that was 1492 when it started. And I don't know, 50 years later, they were hauling shiploads of tobacco everywhere, I think. And because they discovered that nicotine. And the American Indians didn't all use tobacco. There was those in those regions. I think somewhere in the South Carolina area, somewhere there, Virginia or something. But it wasn't. They didn't just everybody. I started smoking when I was 8 years old. Us kids would sneak because our moms and dads and some of the kids, my mom and dad did. Well, my mom actually did smoke when I was pretty young. And Chesterfield, she smoked. And I don't know that my dad ever smoked because he died when I was just 2 months old. But my stepdad didn't smoke, but he chewed Copenhagen tobacco. And that was just a routine for him. He had his can of Cope, and he'd get it out and put it in there, And so as kids, and we don't think, we was sneaking alcohol too not long after that. We go to the picnics. They used to have the big, I grew up out by Washington, south of Seattle, Federal Way, Kent, Auburn, and 5 Mile Lake. So it was a lake close to our house where us kids used to always go. And they'd have big picnics from all these big factories that were building Boeing airplane parts and other industry. And the companies that put on these big picnics, and these people would have sometimes bands, a lot of times bands. And then they'd have all those games and the sacks and the races. And us kids that used to be neighbor kids around, we'd clean the park after they'd all leave, and we'd get free passes, and so we'd get in on all that. And then we'd sneak that alcohol too. They would leave. Sometimes you'd find whole bottles, but a lot of times half bottles and stuff. And us kids, we were up for that. We didn't drink that much. That was as we got into the teens, we started drinking a little and more so, and we'd actually get money together and get somebody to buy it. And caffeine was just a norm. That was, chocolate. Boy, when I was in grade school, chocolate milk, that was a big deal. We had that like once every week or 2 weeks. And boy, chocolate milk today, and we get to have chocolate milk, And I at home, I would make chocolate, we used to call them, I don't know, mountain haystacks or something. You take chocolate and oatmeal and coconut and I think sugar and milk or something, and mix them all together. And it was you'd heat it on the stove and then butter and melt it, and then put all them ingredients. And then you'd put it on wax paper or the counter or something, and then they'd dry it and put them in the fridge. and it was just a big piece of chocolate candy is what it was. Really good, but I'd eat a lot of those. Then lemonade, Ma used to make lemonade. Kool-Aid, we always had Kool-Aid, you know. And we didn't know, my Ma didn't know, nobody knew. Cookies, cake, that's typical. All us kids after the war in the 40s and 50s, those are pretty prosperous times. And the farm kids, and milk, of course. And Twinkies was one of the ones from, and they used to have what they called a flip. It was a little cake thing with some of that foam kind of cream stuff in it for frosting. And so all these sweets and sugars and stuff, never knowing, we're building airplanes. My dad worked for Boeing's. And of course, I'm just a kid then, going to school and having our fun and doing things and learning. And just like the world then and the world today and the world before that and the world tomorrow, we're just all eating all these sugars and caffeine. And then as we get a little older, we get into the alcohol and nicotine, never once knowing, never with a clue. And if that's why this is a genuine, bona fide discovery. It's completely unknown. And that's how we came to be. The deer took over the whole forest and enslaved everybody, which is the humans I'm referring to now. Instead of just having our skirmishes and our territory there and stuff, we became kings and rulers, and with this enhanced, everything being more adrenaline type thing that comes with stimulants. And it's easy to identify cocaine and amphetamines as stimulants. Now we're talking caffeine and alcohol and nicotine and sugar and hybrid carbohydrates. That's the unknown. We feed it to our babies. Absolutely unknowingly. All across the planet Earth. And every one of us, the 7.5 billion people now, this industrial food chain that we have, you know, farming is just big business is all it is. Nothing less and nothing more. It's a huge business. There's a field of corn right across from me here. Anytime there's a piece of ground, it's surprising that guy probably could lease that out, either for the hay to feed cows or they could plant it. And you could just about say every square inch is going to be for cattle feed or for human consumption or for grains or potatoes or. And then the fruit orchards, you know, in California and Florida, and orange juice and apple juice, and it just goes on and on. And then the cows and the dairy, that's just endless. And of course, this is just wholesome as all the world. It's sugar, 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 sugar. Now, a baby gets on the ma's tit from the time they're born, from the moment of birth, and I'm sure they had probably in the 9 months their ma's umbilical and the whole body system in their placenta feeding that baby and getting it to birth. But now baby gets on the tit and it's got this very high lactose and fat and gives the baby the start in life, so that if we got to run from the bear or something, we can run and the baby can take that jarring and get him up and going, so he'll be walking too by come winter and stuff here, and to be able to care for, you know, that's how the deer do it, so that they can get stronger, and elephants and whales and everything that's mammals. But when they get done with that mother's milk, they go on to more normal carbohydrate intake, which is far less. And it's mixed in the ratios of carbohydrates and protein and fat and all these other fiber and you know, the nutrients and the whole thing in our nature's food versus the store-bought shipped apples and corn and carrots and potatoes, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on. So they're starting to get towards dark now. I can see it. You probably can't, but my lights are shining up on that. That thing runs 24 hours a day. My light bill was only $36 this month. I got LED lights, and they're just great. I just love them. So I keep them lit up all the time. If it's overcast, that works really good. Sometimes in a bright sunny day here, I'll just go ahead and unplug them for 4 or 5 hours until it starts to get towards evening again. And then I'll plug it in. But so I want all this traffic, see, going by. If I was to show you the other side of this is just a little country rural road. There's a little town out here called Richwood, about 10 miles, which is where my family east of there on the reservation, White Earth Indian Reservation. We're from Sugar Bush, big Sugar Bush, little Sugar Bush, and then some people call it Strawberry Lake now, that whole greater area out there, because that's the biggest lake. That's about 5 miles past our group. And I still got a bunch of family out there. That's for my ma. Now my grandpa, he came in through this country 1900. They came through White Rock, which is about 75 miles from here, and into western North Dakota, over by Montana, over by Webo and Beach, only up north a ways there, Trotter, and it's where the oil boom is now. And it was great. There was 6 feet of grass, and boy, they thought, here it is. They were in a wagon train, and it was the Dakota Territory at that time, and I don't know, the government was partialing it out. And my grandpa, so it'd be my ma's dad. Ma wasn't born yet then, and then his dad, so great-grandpa, and his sister Bessie. I got to know Bessie in the later years, and 7 or 8 wagons in that wagon train, I think. And White Rock, South Dakota, there was wagon trains coming east and west, north and south. The trains hadn't come through yet, and they were just getting ready to come. And so late 1800s there, after the Civil War, they're taking the west half of the United States. And my people, my grandpa was Scotch-Irish, grandma was German. I don't know, never did hear the story how they happened to meet. But her people had migrated too. And I know she had brothers and family because many years later, 50 years later, 60 years later, when her grandma was gone, but a couple of her brothers were bachelors. They had never married, and so her kids inherited. It wasn't much. They got $1,000 a piece or something. They had a little house somewhere in some small town in rural Iowa or something like that. But the migrations were all taking place. So, and my ma, I always tell them about my ma. She was born about just 3 miles of town, and about 6 miles past there, the Burgess Trail. There's a little town called Burgess, about 10 miles, I think, as the crow flies. And they were headed over into that area. It's called Dead Lake, in the Fletcher place. That Grandpa had rented that. They had to leave North Dakota out there. They had 7, 8 good years, but then they had to leave. They had a drought, 7-year drought. And they said when at the 7th year, they hung in there for 6 of those 7 years, and no crops, everything bone dry. The 6 feet of grass and all this wonderful soil and conditions were at 6 years of drought, and the ground was just parched and dry, and the crop that year was just nothing. And everybody's gone bust. And they got I don't know if anybody stayed. The sheep herder, they had an auction for a sheep herder, and the trains had come through by then. This is, about 1916, I think. And so a little over 100 years ago. And the sheep herder who had settled in that country there, see the English bankers and the whole banking system, investments and stuff, and that sheep herder, they backed him, and he would sell the sheep, and the trains would haul the sheep to market, and then the wool, of course, too. So either the wool or the meat. But the sheep herder, he was leaving. He couldn't. His sheep were starving. There was nothing for him to eat. So he sold out right to the last sheep. He didn't keep his brood stock. And then the last thing they sold after all the sheep was sold, and the railroad people bought all the sheep and put them on their boxcars and shipped them east. And I don't know, just maybe only as far as Chicago, I don't know. And then Grandpa bought the wagon that the sheep herder had lived in, and it was a covered wagon, typical of all the covered wagons. Only it was for living conditions for him, so he could follow his sheep around and to different pastures and stuff. They called it the camper. See, I always thought the camper was a new term. We had all these campers that we put on pickups and pull and all that. And it had a kitchen and a bedroom. And so Grandpa bought that, and he was a horseman anyway, and so he had 4 horses pulling that thing. And then another 4 horses, they'd change off every so many miles, depending on what the conditions were. And then the mares and the colts. So there's, like 20 horses, or a dozen anyway. And, 4 and 4, there's 8. 4 pulling and 4 to switch off, there's 8. And then some more mares and some more colts. So every bit of a dozen, I don't know if there'd be 15. And then he's got this big 24-foot covered wagon with a kitchen and a bedroom and about 7 or 8 kids. And they had to leave. So they came back to White Rock, which was another few hundred miles. And I don't know if they're traveling 15, 20 miles a day. I guess there was such a thing as 50 miles in a really good day, long day with perfect conditions, but they didn't usually have that. And now he's back to White Rock again. They were there for a few years. And I don't know if it's called the bubonic plague or black plague came through. Grandpa helped build one of the schools, I think there, or courthouse or something with the blocks. He's a brick mason of some sort that he had acquired over his lifetime there. And he lost 2 of the boys, Clarence and Billy. And one was 9 and one was 16. They died in Grandpa's arms. And it was just tragic time. Just tragedy upon tragedy upon tragedy. They had to leave the homestead. And I don't know if they had like a sod house, probably. And because there wasn't much timber there at all. And but they were living good. And when Grandpa first got there, they made him sheriff. Because he was new, and that wagon train had come into that part, and they needed to have a sheriff. So you got to have laws to rule this whole thing. And that's the same thing that's going on today, to rule the people. Because this crazy greed and stuff, and this warring, killing, robbing, taking instincts, all high on caffeine and alcohol and nicotine and wheat and milk and juice and honey, and alcohol. Nicotine. So, but he said he would do it for that first 6 months, but he said it was no job for a family man, because they could maybe get some single guys to do that if they wanted to, or whoever they wanted to get, but he'd pay his dues. He'd do it for the 6 months. So he did it, I don't know, 6 months or a year or something. And they were like constables or something. But there was the law, and then when there was something going on, somebody tried to rob a bank or somebody land dispute or whatever it was, they called the sheriff. He was the one for his time, and he didn't get shot, or I don't think he had to shoot nobody. But then they left that country. They were settling there. They were going to live there forever. But they had to leave. And they come, so we could get back into this country here. And he left White Rock. They posted on the bulletin boards there. There was a Fletcher place over by Burgess for rent, and maybe a lease option. I don't know. That guy was, I don't know if the bank owned that piece of property or what it was. So we're headed there in this wagon. But Grandma was pregnant with her 10th child, I think, 9th or 10th. And they had to pull the wagon over. And then Grandma had Ma, Hazel Dodd. And then I suppose they waited another day or two. Granny gets some strength up and stuff, but she had a lot of kids. So you hear about the Chinese woman or something just to go in and have their baby and come leave the rice fields or something, and then back into the rice fields 2 hours later. So it isn't like but a buckboard, on that wagon. But maybe Grandma would just walk, because you couldn't, or ride just a horse. So and ride a nice horse and give her a nice smooth ride. Or maybe they could drive the wagon. They didn't have only about 6 more miles to go to get to the Fletcher place. So they got to the Fletcher place, and then that's where the wagon caught on fire one time, and they said, Grandpa said, to hell with it, let it burn. And he said the same thing when they left North Dakota. He posted on the reader board there, to hell with North Dakota. He was put out. He was really put out, because here him and his dad and the whole family and sisters and wagon trains and homesteaded and making their life. And here had to pick up stakes and leave. So here he comes. Now this is just south of Detroit Lakes here. And then we ended up over here at Frazee. They had the largest sawmill in the world here in Frazee. They were logging this whole country. You know, we stole this land from the Indians and slaughtered all them and chased the rest of them off. And now we're cutting all the trees and uprooting the stumps with horses and teams and pickaxes and plowing the ground and planting wheat. And in a good year, if you get a patch of ground there and you get that wheat in, wheat was so valuable you could actually enough money to buy a house. Now you wouldn't be a modern day house, but you could buy the lumber and maybe build a house or something, or a barn with that 1 year's wheat crop. Wheat was that valuable. So here's all these stimulated people. These are the people that are murdering all the Indians, and you know, all through South America and North America, and it's the same British. If you look on them flags on this last posting I made, where they colonized the whole planet Earth. They're warring, killing monsters, murdering everybody everywhere, and making them Christians. So, and then the missionaries come in, and we all got to obey the law, and we all got to pay our taxes, and we all got to vote and work, and this is just wonderful, wonderful democracy. And capitalism, and the bankers are coming in, and they turned the whole planet Earth into this carbohydrate. You know, they're like living organism factories to start with, and we got, because of the high breeding in the farming. So and then we populated this thing. This population, just unbelievable. There was, when my mom was born in that covered wagon, there may have been 1 billion people then. And that was just astronomical. You know, you got New York City and Chicago and London, and probably Amsterdam and all these different, Moscow, I don't know, Hong Kong, China. So there's 1 billion people on the planet Earth. And that is just astronomical. 100 years before that, there had been half of 1 billion people, 500 billion people. That was astronomical. Now here they doubled in less than 100 years there to 1 billion people. When I was born, my mom had been 20, I think my dad was 26, so mom was about 24. So 24 years after my mom was born, I was born, there was 2.5 billion people. So we went from 500 million, because there had only been 250 million of people for, let's say, 10,000 years, maybe 100,000 years maximum. 1/4 of 1 billion people, planet Earth, 250 million. We jumped to that 500 million, and then all the way to 1 billion when my mom was born, all the way to 2.5 billion 24 years later when I was born, and now to 7.5 billion. That's 1,000 million, 7 times for the 1,000 million, 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 then 500,000 million. That's what we're populated to now. And it's all tied into this growth and this warring population and warring and farming and planting and these sugars and these carbohydrates and the stimulated mind. So I'm going to see if I can play you a little song here. I should put my gizmo on here. I think it goes on, God darn it, I can't remember. That last song, I think it goes on the first fret. I can't remember on this one. I think it's the 2nd fret, and I'll try it. I always got to do Sam Cooke, and the change is going to come, because that's the song I'm working on now. I'm also working on that English guy, Ed Sheeran. Perfect. Yeah, but I got a whole bunch of work to do on that yet, but that's to be the next one coming. I was born on a river in a little town, just like that river. I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but things is gonna change. been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. Don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but things is gonna change. That's my beautiful little Martin. I just love it. And here's my little first act. Whole different sound. I was born on a river. It's out of tune. I'd have to spend 10 minutes tuning that. It sounds much better than that. And I got my D45 in the house there. I'll bring that out one of these times. I'm going to take this off the pod and I'm going to do a 360 for you and show you my place a little bit. I'm going to get a fire going in that fire pit next time. And it's just me again and again and again and again saying the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. I believe that if we can get a grip on this whole thing that we're putting ourselves up with this wonderful democracy and this wonderful Christianity and this whole expansion and build and these warring, killing armies. 50 million people. My dad was one of them in World War II, and my uncle. And 50 million, and that's when the population was 2.5 billion. Now we're 7 billion. This superiority that comes with this enhanced high, like the pimps, this superiority, and you know, they're pretty vicious people. They do a lot of killing amongst themselves and amongst their whores. You know, they're pretty brutal monsters. These high on caffeine or cocaine pimps, and so are our. Now we do it in a nice way. So you got Mr. Wonderful Donald Trump and Mr. Wonderful 63 million Christians telling Korea that he's going to annihilate them if they don't come around. You know, the likes they've never seen. Well, that means he's going to kill, I don't know, 50 million, 100 million women, children, and babies. That's the Christians threatening. And they're threatening, they'll be threatening Russia if it comes to that. They'll be threatening China. And sanctions. We're going to starve them to death if they don't get on this business bandwagon with us here for all this great, wonderful industrial wealth and all this wonderful living that we have, and the superiority and the warring and the killing. We took over this country here, and you get into the migrations now. We got 100 million people here in the United States that hate us. All the blacks, all the Indians, all the Mexicans, all the Muslims, everybody but the whites. And of course the whites, they want to make America great again. They want to just take complete control in Europe and the EU and Brexit, and they're going to just all get this migrations under. They haven't figured it out yet that there's 5 billion people and that we're all relying on that food chain. And when these wars and all these skirmishes, now we got this new Turkish leader that is coming into power now. And they're white people, but they hate us too because they're Muslims and we're Christians. And this whole thing should never have been and should never be. It's completely non-functional. Now, if we're going to follow Trump's camp there and just slaughter everybody and bring everybody to their knees, and everybody's going to go to their knees, and then we'll come through with our royal carriage, you know, and them guys in them big black hats and from Buckingham Palace, and we'll go down the streets of Hong Kong and you know, all over the whole world and Venezuela some more. It's not going to happen. We did that when they had 200 million people on the planet Earth. We've added 5 billion in just my lifetime. These people are saying, no, you're not. You pimps are not the supreme beings, and that we got to answer to you. Their bucks get to be bucks. But we think not. They get to be bucks all right, but we're scoffing and laughing at that North Korea Kim Jong, you know, and the Rocket Man, you know, ho ho ho, you know, and he's doing his thing with us now, you know. They've clued him in. They said, hey, you know, Russia and China took him off to the side there, and they said, you know, we're trying to close in on these lunatics. But we got to just play this thing out because they got all these bombs, which is us Americans, and they'll use them. They're just murderers, you know. And that's our heroes. Our heroes, they call all our military, you know, to go kill all these people, so that the business people and the oil companies and the banks and the farmers and the commodities markets can all just do all this great investments and more of this luxury and big SUV Cadillacs and Mercedes Benz and fly airplanes and take trips and live this land of luxury, you know. Completely destroying the planet Earth, destroying the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat. There's 10,000 lakes and you can't eat the fish. Now you do, because just like you eat the fruit, the apples and the potatoes and the whole array of food, the beef and the pork, turkeys and the chickens, but the pregnant women are recommended not to eat because the acid rain from burning all that coal. We got 1 billion cars spewing fossil fuel into the air, 1 billion cars, and that's not counting lawnmowers. And we got 1 million air flights a day. When you see them streaks going across that sky, and they call us tree huggers. These Christian industrialists, warmongers, just going to keep this thing going. And they got investments everywhere, and they just so fat and sassy and got so much. They just, you know, and praising the Lord the whole way. And you're evil, atheist, if you don't believe like them and how wonderful they are, you know. So and that's all tied into these stimulants. This whole thing is tied into the stimulants. They imagine those gods, and that's how they justify all that murdering. They have justified all that murdering across this whole planet Earth, and they're going to justify it again. Heroes going out there doing their murdering. You know, and the ones that do it, they reward them handsomely, you know. So I'm going to take that thing off the stand there, and I'm going to show where I'm at here a little bit. And I appreciate talking with you, and I'm wishing and hoping, as far as the ALS people, make of this what you will, but I think it's important to us ALS people, and as much as it is to the population in general, and all these people, we're all dying, this people with ALS. But most of us have children and families and mothers and dads and grandkids, and we would like the world to be better for them. I discovered this, totally unrelated to ALS, and then I've had this message up here. This truck's been out here for about 3 years now, and I've been working on this for 10, 12 years. Now I'm getting ready to die. I got 6 months. I don't know what's going to happen when I got no arms. I have arm progression. And my no bull bar, or whatever it is, for my throats and lungs and voice yet. I don't know if I got only 6 months. I've had it a couple of years. So I'm kind of desperate, but to get the message out. I'm not going to be like Hawkins, where he's in that wheelchair like this and got that voice recorder, and he's got people taking care of him and spoon feeding him, and they dress him, and they wipe his butt, and get a big lift, the thing that lifts him to put him into a bed, and he lays in that bed for the other however many hours, and then they bring him back out of that, and he's got this hole for food and the breathing machine. And I don't, I salute the man, and I salute every one of you ALS people that are going through that. I run into one over in the neighboring town here, and he has the one similar to mine, but his arms went all the way. So now he's got that. He said he walked for quite a while after that, but then now the last 3-4 years, I think he's been in that wheelchair. And I told him I was thinking about checking out. I said, this thing is just not going to work for me. And she spoke, and he did too at the same time, kind of said, yeah, that's what he had planned. But then when he got there, they said it turned out to be different than that, because they put the hole in him to breathe and eat and all that. And he is conscious, and he's got the wife and all them kids taken care of. And he said, I got my children, he said, I want to help raise. So he wanted to be there for them rather than just be in debt and killing himself. And so I salute the man, and I salute every ALS patient there is that's going to take this to whatever extent they do, and I couldn't swear where I'm going to take it to. And it's a very unfortunate, I would say a dirty deal we get this, but it's just, you know, we're the ones that got it. And the ones that didn't get it, more power to them. And I hope, like within my family, mine's familial, I think, because I got a couple of cousins that had it. And I hope they get a cure for this. And I would, maybe my thing here and this stimulant thing will possibly tie into this ALS. Why is our muscles breaking down, our signals from our brain to our spine and our neurons and things? You know, these sugars and these stimulants are, you know, they had nut houses and prisons and jails in every city in America from the day one. You built the church, the school, and the jail, 1, 2, 3, and whichever one first. And because of the effects of all these stimulants and nut houses. We got a nut house down here. And when I was in Washington, it was called Steilacoom, which is down by Tacoma down there somewhere was the nut house. So they got these nut houses for that effect, everything from schizophrenia to paranoia to depressions, and then they got this whole retardation thing, and all this is tied into these very unnatural sugars and carbohydrates that we're so massively addicted to. You know, we got the school buses out, coming out, picking up the kids and hauling them to school, and this whole regimented life, this British, what I call British Stockholm syndrome. But that you got to have the jails and the police and the nut houses to make that work. Now in the nut houses, they stopped that. They got them, they're in individual homes now. They're doing that quite a bit. And my youngest daughter does that for a living. She takes care of some of those people. And better than the nut houses. But what I'm getting at is this thing is a very unhealthy thing, all these sugars and stimulants, and a very unnatural diet, along with the growth that it's made, which is poisoning the air and the water and the food. And it's requiring all these pesticides and fertilizers in this whole 9 yards of disaster. So, you know, we're kind of front and center, us ALS people, of a diseased group of people that have been taken unknowingly. I see the guys out there walking his dog. So I'll thank you again. I'm going to lift that up like I said I would and show you the circle here, and then I'm going to turn it off and go in and put this on YouTube and post it to my website. And I'd like to thank you, anybody that's wrote this thing out and listened to it, and maybe if you did it in segments, if you couldn't do it all in one, or if you could do it in one, but send this thing around, get this thing known, everybody. We ALS people, and we common citizens, and we white people and black people and poor people and rich people and Republicans and Democrats and Christians and atheists and Muslims and Buddhists and Hindu and Chinese, and I mean, let's get this thing out there. Because if we was to take and grasp this thing that I'm talking about and how it's affected our lives and everything that we're doing, you know, in the name of democracy and freedom, if that's freedom and democracy, boy, I'll tell you, seeing things for what they really genuinely are, this British royal superiority, and boy, we got it. We got it. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, I'm out of the chair and that thing's still going, so that part's good. I'm going to push the button on this here and take this out. And now, let's see, I'll keep shining like this. Okay, My house is kind of junky around my front of my house there, but I'll get to that one of these times. That's my trailer house. I like it. It's a 14 by 70. That's my dually. I love my dually. Oh man, I love that. That's a 1-ton dually with a 7.3 Power Stroke diesel and 4-wheel drive dually. And then that's my cars and my old bicycle there. I got several of those Festivas. One goes down, I just get in the other one and go. There's that cornfield across the road there. There's the traffic coming by. Seeing my side. I got these chairs. I got a whole bunch of chairs. I got them at a sale one time. The guy says, "You want those?" And I said, "Yeah." "If you're throwing them." He said, "Yeah, I'm gonna throw them." My granddaughter doesn't live in that corner trailer there or the blue one, but the one in between the two. You can hardly see her there. We passed that little car. My granddaughter, Casey Joe, and Babu, I call her. That road right there, pavement there, going to a town. I'm south now. Then I come back around to the truck again. I had an hour and 15 minutes. Get back to the truck again. Just that road out there in front of the truck there, that's just right immediately you can't see it if the truck wasn't there. If I walked out there just a little bit, there's the little tiny access road that cuts in there. And that's the lake. Let's see if I can get a little closer. You won't be able to see the lake because of the trees. There's that's my parade truck, I call it. It's a 1952 Chevy. But just through the back of that, I guess it's about 50 yards, 150 feet. And there's the dock and the boat landing of them cars. You see the little fish house there. If there was a car coming in and out of the access road there, you would see it going into the trees there. It only goes about 50 feet or about 100 feet. And then you're at the lake there. So that's right all in behind there. And I got the lake. My truck again. This view here and my dually. So there you go, folks. I appreciate it. It's got AEAF lock and a red light flashing. I don't know what that means. But I'm going to push the button. And I want to thank you again. I'll let you see these next two cars coming. There they go. There I'm filming. There goes another one. Okay. You have a good day and thank you.